Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Tuhami from Midway Simplicity and welcome to a new episode of the Midway Decluttering Show where you will find great tips and insights on how to declutter your first 100 items. And I have a very special guest today and I tried to get in touch with him since a long time and I feel honored and I'm so glad that I finally could meet him online. He is Colin Wright, a man with diverse experience, a very interesting guy. He's living a very exciting story. He is the face behind the great blog called Exile Lifestyle, and he is also the co-founder of a publishing company called Asymmetrical Press. He's an author, entrepreneur, and full-time traveler. Every 4 months he moves to a new country, and the interesting part is that his readers decide where he goes. Interesting. Colin, it's an honor and pleasure to have you on the call finally.
The honor is mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, your readers decide where you go. Are you
Yeah.
serious about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I trust my readers wholeheartedly. And when I started traveling, I was actually that stereotypical American who had a passport but no stamps in it. So I figured everyone else in the world probably had a better idea of where to go than I did. So I thought I'd take their advice.
Awesome. So have you been to Egypt before?
I haven't. I've been wanting to go, and I've heard very good things. But
So
when I do finally make it there.
I'm one of your readers now, and I'm telling you where to go next
Okay,
month.
yeah. Oh, cast your votes, and then that way, once I get enough votes and I can finally make it over there, you'll have to tell me all the good places to go.
Sure. Just let me know.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Colin, how did you start your decluttering process? Because I believe you have done a lot of progress in terms of decluttering to be able to be light and free to travel whenever you decide. So, how did you
Yeah.
start your decluttering process?
It was actually kind of an accident. I decided that I wanted to travel, but I didn't know what that would mean. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time, so I had this townhouse by the beach and had that kind of lifestyle. I
Yeah.
had a lot of stuff, just tons of it. Like in my office alone, I had like 8 computers and 12 monitors and all the gadgets that I could buy because the money was coming in. So I thought, well, I'd better spend this, reinvest it in gadgets and things, and that was kind of my passion at the time. And this a closet full of clothes and things like that, like this big walk-in closet the size of like some New York apartments, full of clothing. So it was a kind of serious situation, and I realized that if I started traveling and I didn't want to take all of this stuff with me, which obviously would not have been practical, I'd have to put it away. I'd have to store it in a bin until I came back. But I didn't know if I would be coming back. So whether it was a year or 5 years, all of this stuff would be completely obsolete by the time I returned. All of the computers would be old and wouldn't work for the type of work I needed to do. All of the clothing would be like ridiculously out of style. I'd be wearing like big baggy pants, or it would be the equivalent of that, where it would just look quite silly. So I decided to start stripping down the things that I owned, and it took me 4 months, but I took all of the stuff I was going to get rid of that did not fit into a carry-on bag, put it in one room of my townhouse, and then invited people over to come take whatever they wanted. And it took a very long time using that method, but by the time I left, I counted when I arrived in the first country that I went to, and I owned about 70 things. And then I had further stripped down to about 50 things when I was in New Zealand, the next country over. So you really don't need much. I've come to realize that. And it does take a while to strip down to the things that you need. And you need less if you're traveling, but you need a few more things probably if you're living in the same place, tables and chairs and such. But yeah, it doesn't take much to make you happy and to fulfill those needs. And then above and beyond that, most things are wants.
Yeah. And what was your biggest decluttering challenge?
The computers.
The
It
computers.
sounds very silly, and I had
Uh,
way too many of them, and I didn't use most of them like ever, but I loved them. it had a special place in my heart, I think, these computers. They were the thing that I invested in and researched and made sure to buy the right ones. Some people have cars, and
Yeah.
thankfully my habit was not as expensive as that, but it was still expensive, the computer habit.
Yeah, you are talking about the Mac, definitely.
Some Macs and some PCs. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had a little
because
bit of both. I used to build PCs when I was younger, and then I started using Macs when I went to design school.
yeah,
So I had a passion for both of them.
awesome. So now let me share with you some of the challenges that I received from my readers when it comes to decluttering. So one of them is that I have too much stuff, and I just can't think where can I start. This overwhelmed by the number of the things that you want to get rid of.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, I find, and I'm fortunate in this actually. I go on speaking tours sometimes with Josh and Ryan from the minimalists.com, and they share all kinds of great advice. So I'm going to take a page from their playbook with that one. Start small, like start in a bathroom or something small like that, and minimize that room. And just get down to the things that you need. Don't leave anything that's excessive that doesn't provide value. And the benefit of that, the victory that you feel from starting small and accomplishing it in a small space, will give you the momentum that you need to continue to go and to continue into the next room and then the next room and then the next room until eventually you don't have all the clutter. You have just the things that make you happy, just the things that really provide value to your life.
Yeah, the challenge with starting small and taking it bit by bit is that is a focus challenge, because how can I maintain my focus till I get rid of all the items that I don't need, because they are too much, and I will take small area here, small area there, and it might take like a couple of years to get
Mm.
rid of everything
Hmm.
if I use this method. So maybe you said that you get rid of everything in 4 months, which is a
Yeah.
great achievement, and this is fast from my point of view. But I think you had the deadline or the pressure of wanting to travel, so you
Mm.
want to get rid of things as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But for other people who are just living in their homes and they just want to get rid of the clutter around, so this method will take a long time. So how can I maintain my focus?
Well, you could set another type of deadline for yourself. The deadline definitely helps, and it helps if it goes tandem with a goal. For me, it was travel, but if you say, I'm going to have a party on this day, and by that day, I need to have enough space so that I can have people over, so that there's not magazines sitting everywhere, and there's not, I don't have excessive collections of knickknacks and such. Set something like that, something that rewards yourself, so that when you finish, you can feel good about it and show it off and show people what you've managed to achieve. But make sure that it's a hard deadline, because if you give yourself any wiggle room on that, if you say, well, maybe sometime during the summer or something, you'll keep on putting it off. But if you set a day and invite people over for that day, something like that, it really holds you accountable.
Yeah, so what you are saying is that you must, before you start the decluttering work, you must find the motivation behind, or set a goal that will, drive the desire to finish the decluttering work, right?
Exactly. It certainly helps because it's not easy with everything. Some things are easy to get rid of. Other things are very, very difficult because you might either feel that they have emotional value, or you remember how long it took you to buy it, or how long it took you to find a particular color of whatever. These things are the things that kind of insidiously sneak into the process and have you
Yeah,
convincing yourself that you don't actually need to get rid of this because it's this color or whatever it happens to be.
yeah.
But that's not what matters. What matters is what you're trying to accomplish in decluttering.
Yeah, we will definitely get into that, these specific sentimental items and how we are attached to that. So now let's move to the organizational skills. Your goal is to declutter or get rid of all the items so that what what's left can fit into one bag.
Hmm.
But for other people, they need some organizational skills, and when they lack it, their decluttering efforts seems to be like useless, because no matter how they get rid of stuff, things still are scattered everywhere because they naturally lack organizational skills. So what's your advice on that?
I think it really depends on the person. I know some people, like me in a vacuum, I definitely tend to put things in boxes and then stack them correctly and have them in a proper place. When they're in those places, I work better, I feel better. Um, for other people, though, they like to have a little bit more clutter, a little bit more mess. Not clutter in the sense of more stuff than they need, but they like to have things in kind of random arrangements or things all over their desk or whatever. I think that will look different for every person that you talk to based on their aesthetics and based on the way that they work. But figuring out the way that works for you, I think, is ideal. Because for me, if I were to try to force myself to have little statues or artwork or something all over my desk, I would never get anything done. It would drive me crazy. And then for other people, though, if they tried to put things in boxes and store them in closets the way that I like to do, it would drive them crazy because they would be like, well, where's all my stuff? How am I supposed to be inspired? So figuring that out ahead of time is good. That way you don't try to force yourself to adopt someone else's mentality on organization.
Yeah, that's great. So see what works best for you and go do it. That's great.
Yeah, and then do it really, really well.
Yeah, yeah, I like that one. So now some people are really their lifestyle and their work make them really exhausted by the end of the day to do any decluttering work, and they might also have a lot of kids that they need to take care of
Mm.
or something like that. So how can I find time to declutter among my busy schedule?
It's very difficult, and it's the same issue that I find people have in terms of trying to write a book or things like that, where there doesn't seem to be time in the day. But usually, if you step back, you can find some time, like the hour or two that you're spending watching TV after work. This is time that you don't need to be watching TV. It's one type of activity. It's a great way to kind of to pacify yourself so that you can forget about the day. It's the equivalent in the U.S. The big thing is people will go out for a drink. They'll get a beer or something to try to forget. You don't need that beer. You don't need that TV. It might help sometimes, but it's not something that you absolutely need. Those are the things that you can take away to bring in the decluttering activities. Alternatively, you could try and for a few days just wake up a little bit earlier. Wake up 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour earlier before anyone else is up, before the kids are up, and then go get something done. Go declutter something, some small area, your closet. That will give you a lot of motivation too. You'll feel so good after doing it that then
Yeah.
the rest of your day will be really, really easy.
Yeah. You touched on a point that's critical here, and sometimes it raises a lot of debate between people, which is needs and wants. When you tell someone you don't need to watch TV, they might fire back and say, but I really need it. So for me, it's a need. TV for me is something that gets me disconnected and relaxed after a tough day and so on. So from your own point of view, how do you define a need and how do you define
Mm.
a want, so that when we say to people you have to get rid of the things that you don't need, they understand what do we mean?
For me, the way that I define it, needs are the things that really, truly bring happiness to your life. They're the things that make you just insanely happy, or it's the stuff that you actually could not function without, things like food and water, the bare necessities. So something like TV to me is not necessary. And it's true, there may be people who truly need TV, like it's something that if they did not have it, their life would be significantly worse. And that's a valid argument. It's just different perspectives. For most people, though, I don't think it is. Most people do it out of habit, and most people do it because they're told that they need to see this or whatever. But we live in an age of the internet. You can see these TV shows whenever you want. You can go back and watch them later. You don't need to be on a TV station schedule. You don't need to sit through all of those advertisements. You can do it in a different time frame, basically. And that same feeling that you get from TV, the relaxation, the kind of clean after work feeling where I don't have to worry about things anymore, you could get that from decluttering too. If you have a better space, you might not feel so tired.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the definition of needs is that the things that are the things that make you absolutely happy. This is a great definition. You mentioned writing a book, and you are the author of 11 books. So can you give us like an insight on how minimalism or adapting a simple and minimal lifestyle helped you find the time to achieve such a great, goal?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, having just the stuff that I need, just the possessions, just the best relationships, like really optimizing my time in that way and my environment in that way gives me both the resources to do it. So that's the time and the money that I have coming in from things that I'm able to focus on so that I can afford to take the time to write. But then also the experiences, the people that I'm able to have in my life and the travel that I'm able to do. All of these things are possible because I focus on those needs first. I've gotten rid of the excess stuff that I don't need to carry with me. I've gotten rid of the excess activities that I don't need to do, the things that don't bring me value, like watching TV, so that I can focus on doing things like writing. And I've made sure that the things that I do in life in general, like the things like traveling, that gives me so much to write about. It gives me so many new perspectives and things to think about that I have a hard time not writing. And it is something that I really, really, truly enjoy. So making it a focus of my time and of my life and of my energy and of the money that I spend and everything, focusing on those things so dedicatedly, makes it very, very easy to put out a lot of words. And hopefully, usually those words are in the correct order. And then I'm able to publish them as books.
Yeah, so I think that I would like to ask you here, which came first? Did you minimalized or simplified your life first, and then you sit and decide, okay, now I have a free time, space, and energy to pursue any goals, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to write some books? Or did you have the purpose or the passion or the goal first, and then you decided that minimalism or simplicity is the only way to get these goals done?
I actually I started writing first, but I didn't do a very good job of it. I tried very hard. I wrote very little. I wrote for my blog, and then I started writing a very, very short book. And it took me forever. And part of that is just the basic learning curve. I didn't know what I was doing. But as I got rid of more stuff, and as I focused my time and energy and possessions and all of these things, reduced them down to just what I needed, I found myself able to invest more time in it, and more time and more time. And then after that, I've managed to publish these 11 books, plus my blog, plus newsletters, plus a subscription service called Exiles, all of these things. I do a whole lot of writing, and I did it all just in the past 4 years because I've been able to focus. I have not had so many distractions, so I'm able to just sit and write when I want because I have less superfluous things in my life.
Awesome. 11 books in 4 years. That is like almost around 3 books a year. That's great.
Yeah, something like that. It's
Wow.
scaling up too. I'm trying
Yeah.
to write even more because I just
Wow.
really love it.
Wow. Wow. Now, what can we do about the peer pressure or social pressure about people who cannot understand why we are getting rid of all the stuff that we own, and people who are buying
The
stuff all
interesting
around?
thing
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that type of peer pressure is that usually it's well-meaning. People associate having more stuff with success. So if you start to get rid of stuff, they start to worry that maybe things are not okay, and that you are not striving for the same standards of success that they are. So they care about you. They don't mean anything bad by it. Usually, they're trying to pressure you into what they see as a successful path, and that's fine. They may not understand right away. There's some people that you'll tell, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. Okay, tell me more about this. Help me do the same thing." And then there's other people who will be like that, and they'll be very well-meaning, but not quite understand at first. And that's fine. The best thing to do with that is just to make it clear, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. I'm not planning on committing suicide or leaving the country or anything. Like, I'm not doing anything truly crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just trying something. I'm trying something that I think will help me achieve what I want to achieve. So, we'll see how that goes. And then generally, from what I've experienced, and a lot of people that I know have experienced who have done this type of thing, usually a few months later, after they've gotten into the process and they've really seen the benefits of it, they have more time to spend on the things that they want to spend that time on. They have more money to spend on the things that they want to spend that money on. Those benefits really start to come through, and then people will come and ask you, what are you doing differently? Why are you so happy? How are you able to write so often? I know you've always wanted to do this. What is it that you're doing? What's your secret? And then at that point, you can tell them. But until then, it's best not to try to force it on anybody, because then it comes across as, some kind of negative thing. So dealing with it in that way, I find, is usually the best approach.
Yeah, that's great. Inspire, don't force.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, great summary of that.
Yeah, and before we move on to your new book, Act Accordingly, I have just one question. You travel a lot. So have you ever traveled, or where is the place that you witnessed simplicity in action that gave you, a whole new perspective about simple living and minimalism, and that's the community that really inspired you more than any other, books or things that you read about simplicity?
That's a great question, actually. It wasn't the places that I would expect, actually. I was kind of thinking I would end up going to these developing countries and I would see a lot of inspirational minimalism there. But it turns out that places like I lived in Calcutta in India for a while, and Bangkok in Thailand for a while. And both of these places, while I thought they would be the most minimalist because there's a lot of poverty and stuff there, so I thought people would adjust to it in such a way that they could still be happy that way. But the consumerism was worse than any other place I had been there. There's advertisements and billboards telling people, these very, very poor people, that they need to buy more stuff. And they were. And they were aspiring to this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And there was so much consumption and trash on the ground, and just it was a very unhealthy approach to things. And I think maybe if I would have gone there 100 years ago, things would have been different, but things have really picked up, and this, I hate to see it as like the American dream, this type of consumption, but that's kind of what it is in a lot of cases. This I must have more in order to feel happy, but never quite getting happy idea. There are other places, though, that I did not expect to find it that I did. Like New Zealand is an interesting place because it's an island nation in the middle of nowhere, and they are very self-sustaining. They're kind of pioneer people who have lived alone for so long that they're not accustomed to having everything that they need, so they fix things. This is something that people don't do in the United States. If something breaks, you go get a new one. You throw it away. In New Zealand, they will fix it, and everyone can fix anything. They can fix their cars, they can fix their toys or their computers, whatever they need to fix. They'll sit down and make it work. And in that way, they don't buy a whole lot more than they need in most cases, especially on the South Island where they don't really have a lot of large cities. People they make do. And then in Iceland, it's the same way, which is another island country. And until recently, they've been very excessively metropolitan, and they needed to have a bunch of different fancy cars and stuff. They were just very, very wealthy, so they could afford to have as many houses and things as they wanted. But their entire economy crashed in 2007, and all of their banks collapsed. They allowed all of their banks to collapse. So everyone went not broke exactly, but they became quite poor overnight, especially compared to where they were. And you don't see a lot of fancy cars or televisions or anything anymore. You see people going out and taking walks, and you see people creating art, and you see people enjoying each other's company. I don't think I've ever seen a country with fewer TVs and video games than Iceland. Just people do not do these things. Instead, they go out and enjoy each other, and they pursue their passions. Because fortunately, that's something they always have been able to do. They've had enough money in the country that they can all be artists and not need to make money off of it. And now they continue to pursue that, but they pursue it on a smaller scale, which is really cool to see.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And I believe they are now happier than they were when they had the money.
I think so
So
too. They're definitely more secure.
yeah, yeah. And finally, let's talk about your book, Act Accordingly. Interesting title. So tell us about the core message of this book.
Well, the core message, actually, this was something I debated about because I'm kind of giving away the core thesis statement of the book on the cover, because it has this quote on the cover. But the inspiration for the title was, "You have exactly one life in which to do everything you will ever do. Act accordingly." And the reason I gave it that title, Act Accordingly, from that quote, is that I think it is of vital importance that we realize that we don't have a lot of time. So we better use that time the best way possible. And this is a philosophy book of sorts, but I'm not trying to force my philosophy on anybody else. I know that what I do and the way I operate and my beliefs and such work for me, but most people are not me. People come from different backgrounds. They're raised in different countries with different religions, with different parents, with seeing different things happen, having different experiences. So the idea that my philosophy would work for everybody is silly. But there are some things that I've learned that I think can be applied across the board. And if you apply it, no matter what your religion, no matter what your background or cultural history, it will help you become a better version of yourself, a better version of whatever religion or philosophy or whatnot you happen to have. These things I feel are quite universal. So that's what I was trying to get across with the book. And that's why I'm making sure that at the bare minimum, if people see the cover, they take away that one bit of information.
That's awesome. You're saying that life is short, act accordingly. Or you can add to that, life ends suddenly, act
Mm.
accordingly. You know,
Yeah, oh, it
it's not
absolutely
about it's
does.
short or long. It you don't know when it will end. So
Hmm. Hmm.
so every single moment you need to be doing something that really makes you happy, so that
Exactly.
when it ends on something that you are proud of.
Exactly. And yeah, and that's why your message that you're talking about here, the minimalism thing, being able to declutter your life as a holistic type of approach, it's so vital, because otherwise you're going to be wading through all this stuff that doesn't matter, all all the possessions and trying to earn these possessions, and all the relationships and all the activities, these things that don't make you happy at all. And it's not that it's going to be a cakewalk. It's not that you can quit your job today and go out and run through the wilderness and just be totally fine. I'm not telling people that they need to do that, but I am telling people that if you focus more on the things that matter and realize that there are other things that don't matter so much, you won't work so hard for stuff that doesn't matter. Instead, you'll be working hard toward things that do, and so more of your days will be very good days. That's kind of the end result, hopefully, if you're doing it right.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a final quote that you would like to leave us with in this call? Inspirational quote.
Um, well, yeah, the book title one definitely is the one that I'd love people to take away. But I would add to that the best way to do it really is to take a step back and really genuinely, truthfully ask yourself what matters. Because very often too we'll say, oh, well, I'm going to meditate or something, and pretend to get into something and touch something on a deeper level, but that's kind of a trend too in a lot of ways. But if you really take the time and sit back and say, these are the things that make me incredibly, crazily happy. Like I could not live without these things, and I want more of these types of things. It becomes very, very clear what is important in your life and what is not, because everything else then is not as important as this right here. And then just do whatever you can to get there. And in most cases, that will mean focusing more on that and less on the other things. It becomes a very, very easy thing to move toward a goal when you know that it's an important goal.
Wow, wow, that's amazing, Colin. You have a lot of great insights. Thank you very much for being my guest today. It has been such an honor and pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.